What happens when a Hollywood legend known for his calm and stoic demeanor finally loses his patience on live television? When a man who spent half a century commanding galaxies, outrunning boulders, and defying every danger imaginable suddenly finds himself cornered. Not by villains, but by words. This is the day Harrison Ford, the man who played heroes, decided to defend his own dignity. Because what happened next left the audience in stunned silence. The show begins like any other episode of The View. The bright studio lights gleam across polished glass tables. The audience claps, cheering the hosts as they wave and take their seats. Joy Behar leans forward with her signature grin, sharp, curious, almost playful, as she glances at the cue cards. Beside her, Whoopi Goldberg looks amused, trying to keep things balanced, while Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes chat quietly between themselves. Then the stage doors open. Harrison Ford walks out. The crowd erupts. Decades of adoration wash over him like thunder. At 83, his presence still commands attention. Rugged, timeless, with that unmistakable squint that says he's seen the world and survived it. He waves once, takes his seat, and leans back as if he'd rather be anywhere else. But he's here to promote his latest project, a small, intimate film about aging, legacy, and the cost of fame. Joy starts off friendly. "Harrison, it's been a while. You've outlived most of your movie franchises," she teases with a laugh. The audience chuckles, but Harrison's lips barely twitch. "Guess I'm lucky," he mutters. She presses on. "You're like the last of the old guard, the rugged, quiet type. But don't you think it's time to lighten up? People say you can be a little grumpy, you know?" The laughter this time feels different. It ripples through the room with a tinge of awkwardness. Harrison glances sideways, his brows lowering slightly. There's a moment, brief but sharp, when his jaw tightens. "I don't think being honest or private makes someone grumpy," he replies evenly. "Some of us just don't enjoy pretending." The audience gives a small, hesitant clap. Joy tilts her head, sensing tension, and she leans in, the journalist in her catching blood in the water. "Oh, come on, Harrison. People adore you. But sometimes, you look like you'd rather not talk to anyone. You've been called difficult. Even some co-stars say you keep to yourself." Ford's fingers tap once on the table. A small sound, but it lands like thunder. "I don't perform off-screen," he says quietly. "And I don't owe anyone access to me when the cameras stop rolling." The crowd hums. A few nods. But Joy isn't finished. "That's fair, but when you're in this business, don't you think fans deserve a little more warmth? After all, they've supported you for decades. You owe them that, don't you?" The word hits him like a slap. Harrison exhales, slow and heavy. His eyes narrow. "I don't owe anyone my personality. They got the movies. That's the deal." The audience gasps. A few scattered laughs, nervous, uncertain. Joy blinks, momentarily thrown off. "Wow, okay. I didn't mean it like that," she says, trying to laugh it off, but the moment has changed. There's a subtle shift in the air. The laughter dies, replaced by that low, electric buzz of discomfort that every live show host dreads. Whoopi clears her throat, attempting to smooth things over. "I think what Joy's saying, Harrison, is that people are fascinated by how real you are. You don't play the PR game." Harrison nods. "There's nothing wrong with being real. It's just that some people confuse privacy with arrogance." Joy gives a tight smile. "Or maybe with defensiveness?" The words slice sharper than intended. Harrison's shoulders stiffen. The silence stretches. You can almost feel the studio lights grow hotter. "I'm not defensive," he says finally, his voice low but edged. "I've just lived long enough to know when someone's trying to pick me apart for entertainment." The audience murmurs, caught between admiration and discomfort. Joy forces a laugh. "Hey, we're just having fun here." "Yeah," Harrison says, leaning forward slightly. "Except I'm not a punchline." That's when the air shifts completely. The crowd falls quiet. Even the producers in the booth seem frozen. Harrison's tone isn't loud, but it carries a gravity that silences the room. The man who once faced down Darth Vader and Nazis now stares down a talk show host. And somehow, it feels just as intense. Joy leans back in her chair, lips pressed together. She wasn't expecting this. The power dynamic flips. She, usually in control, suddenly looks like she's the one under the spotlight. The silence stretches for a few unbearable seconds before Whoopi jumps in again, laughing awkwardly. "Well, folks, Harrison Ford, still keeping it real after all these years." The audience claps weakly, the tension half diffused but still humming. Harrison gives a small nod, his expression unreadable. He looks out toward the crowd, and for a moment, You can almost see the storm behind his eyes. When the cameras cut to commercial, Joy turns to him with a forced smile. "Hey, I hope I didn't cross a line," she says under her breath. "You did," Harrison replies calmly. "But I've dealt with worse." There's no anger, just weary honesty. And somehow that makes it sting more. As the producers rush to reset for the next segment, the studio feels different, quieter, charged. The audience whispers among themselves. Some think Joy went too far. Others think Harrison overreacted. But no one can deny one thing. They just witness something raw, something real. What no one knows is that the next segment will push both of them even further, past awkward tension and into open conflict. Because the moment the cameras come back on, Joy won't back down. And Harrison Ford won't stay silent. When the show returns from the break, the atmosphere is different. The audience claps, but it's softer now, uncertain. The tension from before lingers in the air, invisible yet heavy. Joy flashes her practiced smile, but even that feels brittle, the kind of smile that hides a bruise. Harrison sits quietly, posture straight, eyes unreadable beneath the glare of the studio lights. He's not angry, not visibly. But something about the way he's looking at the table, calm and still, gives the sense of a storm waiting for the right gust of wind. Whoopi senses it. She gives the audience a half-joking look. "Well, before we all get nervous again," she says, drawing a few chuckles, "let's talk about your movie, Harrison. It's about an aging pilot facing his past. A lot of people are saying it feels personal." Harrison nods slowly. "It is. It's about how much of yourself you give away before you realize there's nothing left to keep." Joy raises her eyebrows. "Sounds a bit grim," she quips. "It's honest," he replies. And there it is again, that word. Honest. It's not sharp, not defensive. Just steady. But Joy, perhaps still stung from before, isn't ready to leave it alone. She leans forward, voice soft but pointed. "You've played heroes your whole life, Harrison. Men who fight, who save, who endure. But lately, it feels like you're fighting something off camera too. You've called interviews nonsense. You've said you don't care about being liked. Is this just age talking, or have you stopped caring altogether?" The studio freezes. The question lands with the weight of a dare. Harrison looks up at her. His expression doesn't change, but his eyes, those weathered, sharp eyes, lock on hers. For a moment, it's not an actor or a host sitting there. It's two people, raw, no script, no pretense. "You think caring means smiling through disrespect?" he says quietly. Joy blinks. "No, that's not what You just asked if I've stopped caring," he interrupts, his tone measured but unmistakably firm. "I care deeply. About my work, my family, my peace. But I don't care to be dissected for amusement." The audience lets out a low, "Oh." The energy ripples. Whoopi's eyes widen slightly, sensing it spiraling again. "Let's all take a breath," Whoopi says, half laughing. "It's daytime television, not an interrogation room." But Joy's pride is pricked. "Hey, I wasn't trying to dissect you, Harrison. I'm just asking the questions viewers want to know. You're a legend. People are curious about what makes you tick." Harrison smiles faintly, but it's not friendly. "Curiosity's fine," he says. "But there's a difference between curiosity and intrusion." The audience claps, louder this time. Joy's smile falters. Her cue cards tremble slightly in her hand. She glances toward the producer's booth, maybe for support, maybe for a signal to move on, but none comes. Sunny Hostin finally jumps in, her voice calm but direct. "I actually think what Joy's asking ties into a bigger topic. Harrison, a lot of public figures struggle with boundaries. Where do you draw the line between being open with your audience and protecting yourself?" Harrison's face softens, just slightly. "That's a fair question," he says, turning toward her. "The line for me is when people stop seeing you as human. When you're just content. A face for them to read, a moment to clip. That's when I step back." The crowd applauds again. There's a strange balance, like the tension has turned into something deeper, more reflective. But Joy can't quite let go. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's discomfort, but something in her pushes back one more time. "Well," she says, chuckling nervously, "if you don't like being analyzed, maybe a talk show isn't the best place to be." A few laughs from the audience, polite, uncertain. Harrison tilts his head slightly. His eyes narrow just a touch. "I came here to talk about my work," he says. "But if you invite someone to your table, don't make them feel like they're on trial." The words land like a quiet explosion. The audience murmurs, sensing they're watching something unfiltered, maybe even uncomfortable. Whoopi's mouth opens as if to steer the conversation away, but Joy's response is faster. maybe too fast. Oh, come on, Harrison. You've faced tougher questions than this. You're an icon. People want to know you. You can't take everything so seriously. Now, the tone has changed completely. Her laughter sounds forced, defensive. The audience shifts, uncomfortable again. And Harrison, he just stares at her. A long, silent moment. Then he laughs, softly, genuinely, but there's a trace of sadness in it. You know, he says, people mistake silence for weakness. But sometimes silence is the only thing that keeps you from saying what you'll regret later. That stops Joy cold. The camera zooms slightly closer, catching the emotion on his face, restrained but real. His eyes glisten just faintly, though he blinks it away before anyone can call it vulnerability. I've spent my life pretending to be strong men, he continues, voice lower now, almost confessional. But strength isn't about talking over people. It's about knowing when enough's enough. The audience applauds, this time genuinely loudly, rising even. Whoopi nods, visibly moved. That's a word right there, she says softly. Joy exhales, leans back in her chair, and finally lets out a small laugh. Not mocking, but human. Okay, she says quietly. Point taken. But the tension doesn't fade. It hovers, a mix of mutual respect and bruised ego. The segment moves on, but every question afterward feels cautious, careful, like stepping through glass. Behind the scenes, the producers are watching from the control room, whispering. The director shakes his head, whispering to the sound tech. That was real TV. You can't script that kind of moment. And he's right, because while the hosts move to lighter topics, a funny clip, a quick laugh, the audience can't stop watching Harrison. The man who's faced monsters on screen just faced something far more dangerous, judgment. And he did it with quiet defiance. When the segment ends, the applause is thunderous. But as they cut to another break, Joy doesn't look at him. Not yet. Harrison stands, stretches slightly, and nods to the crew. You all do good work, he says to no one in particular. Then he turns, and this time his eyes meet Joy's. There's no anger there, just exhaustion. You don't have to like me, he says softly, but you should know when to stop pushing someone's buttons just because the camera is on. Joy doesn't answer right away. But something in her face, a flicker of regret, maybe realization, says she hears him. As the music fades out and the lights dim for another commercial break, the audience remains on edge, whispering to one another. They can feel it too, that something's not over yet. When the show comes back on, the atmosphere is taut, that kind of charged quiet where every breath feels a little too loud. The audience tries to return to polite applause, but even that sounds half-hearted. It's as if everyone senses that whatever just happened hasn't really ended. It's only paused. Joy Behar adjusts her mic, her face calm but her hands restless. Harrison Ford sits across from her, his posture still, almost motionless. He's not glaring, not defensive, just present in a way that feels heavy, like every word he says now will carry extra weight. Whoopi Goldberg clears her throat. So, she says with a careful smile, Harrison, before we wrap up, let's talk legacy. You've built a career spanning 50 years. What keeps you grounded? There's relief in her voice, the subtle plea of a moderator trying to restore balance. Harrison smiles faintly thoughtful. Gratitude, he says. And the people who keep me honest. I've had my share of mistakes, but I've been lucky enough to have people around me who tell me when I'm wrong. The audience claps warmly. It's a moment of calm, a chance for the energy to settle. But then Joy leans in again. That instinct, that compulsion to regain control, to bring the conversation back under her direction. That's good to hear, she says, smiling tightly. Because honestly, Harrison, sometimes people see your interviews and wonder if you've become a little too detached. Like maybe you don't enjoy this anymore. The fame, the connection with fans. It's almost like you're trying to push people away. The audience hums quietly, sensing something stirring. Harrison blinks, expression unreadable. Detached, he repeats softly, tasting the word like it's unfamiliar. I've learned not to mistake quiet for detachment. You can't live your whole life performing for approval. Joy chuckles, trying to keep it light. But that's part of being a public figure, isn't it? You're not just an actor, you're a symbol. People feel like they know you. His gaze sharpens. That's the problem, he says. They don't. They know characters. They know what studios show them. But they don't know me. The audience falls silent. You can feel the gravity in his tone, not anger, but weariness. A lifetime of being seen and misunderstood. Joy shifts, uncomfortably now, but keeps her voice smooth. But don't you think fans have earned a little more of you? After all, without them, there's no career. Something in that sentence hits deep. Harrison's jaw tightens. His voice stays calm, but there's steel underneath. I gave my career my life, he says. Every hour, every flight, every stunt. I've earned the right to keep something for myself. The room stills. It's a truth so raw that it slices through the polite studio atmosphere like a knife. But Joy doesn't stop. Maybe she doesn't realize the edge she's walking, or maybe she does and thinks she can handle it. She leans forward, almost whispering. I get that, but when you're in the public eye this long, privacy becomes a luxury. Isn't that part of the deal? You can't pick and choose when you want the spotlight. For the first time, Harrison looks directly at her. Really looks. His voice drops lower, steadier. That's exactly what boundaries are, Joy. Choosing where the spotlight ends. It's quiet now. You could hear a pin drop. Then, with a laugh that's more nervous than amused, Joy says, Oh, come on, you sound like you resent the whole thing. The interviews, the questions, the fans. You're lucky to have this career, aren't you? That's when it happens. The moment the temperature in the studio drops completely. Harrison leans forward, his eyes locked on hers. Lucky, he repeats softly. I've worked since I was 20. I built my luck with my hands, with my time, with the years I lost with my family. I don't need to be told to be grateful for what I've already given everything to. The audience gasps. Whoopi looks down, pressing her lips together. Sunny Hostin glances toward the floor, knowing they've crossed into something deeply personal. Joy sits frozen, her smile gone. Harrison exhales slowly. You talk about gratitude, he continues. But gratitude doesn't mean letting people chip away at your dignity just to make good TV. A long silence follows. Then, unexpectedly, the audience begins to applaud. Slow at first, then growing louder, like they're collectively realizing they've just witnessed something real. Something raw. Whoopi tries to jump in, voice soft but steady. Let's take a second. I think what Harrison's saying is that gratitude and self-respect aren't opposites. You can love your fans and still set limits. He nods at her. Exactly. Joy opens her mouth, then closes it again. She glances toward the audience, her usual composure shaken. For once, she doesn't have a clever comeback. She looks down, gathers her cue cards, and exhales. The tension hangs in the air, but now it's different. Not just awkward. Heavy. Real. Whoopi clears her throat again. You know, Harrison, you've been in this business a long time. What's the one thing you wish people understood about you? He thinks for a moment. That I'm just a man who loves what he does. I'm not a story. I'm not a soundbite. I'm just a person trying to live quietly when the lights turn off. It's quiet again, but this time the silence feels like respect. The audience claps softly, some even standing. Joy nods, almost humbled. That's fair, she says quietly. But just as the segment nears its end, a voice from the audience shouts, We love you, Harrison. He smiles, a real smile this time, and says, I love you too. Just don't read too much into me. Laughter breaks through, gentle and genuine, easing the tension at last. As the cameras pan out and the theme music swells, Harrison glances one last time at Joy. Their eyes meet, not in anger now, but in a quiet understanding. It's the look of two people who finally realize they weren't fighting over questions or pride, but over the space between what's public and what's private. The audience continues clapping, but somewhere in that sound, you can feel it, something unresolved, something lingering. Because when the cameras cut and the applause fades, what's said off-air might just change everything that followed. The cameras fade to black, and the studio's lights dim for the final break of the day. The tension that had quietly simmered throughout the episode now hangs thick in the air, almost physical. Crew members exchange glances. The audience, still whispering about what just unfolded, buzzes with a mix of awe and disbelief. Joy Behar sits still at the table, cue cards motionless in her hands. Harrison Ford adjusts his jacket, his expression unreadable. He's not angry, not anymore. Just done. The director counts down for the final segment. We're back in 5, 4, 3. The applause light flickers on, and the audience claps, unsure whether they're cheering for resolution or just routine. The hosts smile, or try to. Harrison gives a small nod to the crowd, that quiet acknowledgement that only makes him seem more dignified. Whoopi jumps in first, clearly trying to smooth the energy. Welcome back to The View, everyone. We've had quite the conversation today. Honest, deep, and maybe a little tense, but that's what happens when real people talk about real things. The audience laughs softly, the mood lightening a fraction. Joy forces a smile. That's right. And Harrison, I just want to say, despite our back and forth, We really do appreciate you coming here and sharing your thoughts. You've had an incredible career, and fans love hearing from you. Her tone sounds genuine, but there's something fragile beneath it, like she's extending an olive branch, unsure if he'll take it. Harrison looks at her, his expression softening slightly. Thanks, Joy. I know you've got a job to do. So do I. Sometimes those jobs don't mix well. A few chuckles ripple through the crowd. But there's truth there, heavy, reflective truth. Joy exhales, nodding. Fair enough. Sometimes we poke too hard. Comes with the territory. Yeah, Harrison replies. And sometimes you poke the wrong person. The audience bursts into laughter, loud and genuine this time. Even Joy laughs, shaking her head. Okay. Touché. Whoopi claps her hands together. See, this is what I love. People being real, not polished. Harrison leans back, that familiar half-smile finally appearing. Polished doesn't mean honest, he says. Most of the time, it's just another performance. For a moment, the whole room seems to quiet, absorbing the weight of that line. Even Joy looks thoughtful, her gaze lowering just slightly, as though she's realizing how much of her own persona is performance too. Sunny Hostin speaks next, her tone softer than before. I think there's something powerful in what you said earlier about boundaries. We live in a world where everyone feels entitled to someone else's story, even when they haven't earned it. Harrison nods. That's the hardest part of being known. People forget there's a human being behind the headline. I've seen friends burn out because they gave too much. I won't be one of them. The studio falls silent again, but it's not uncomfortable anymore. It's reverent. Like everyone, audience, hosts, crew, knows they're witnessing a rare kind of truth from a man who almost never speaks it. Joy folds her hands, glancing up. She says softly, I might have pushed too hard earlier. I didn't mean to come off disrespectful. Harrison looks at her, long enough that it feels like an answer in itself. Then he says quietly, I appreciate that. It's easy to forget that even public people have private limits. It's not anger, it's just self-respect. The audience claps, some nodding, others even tearing up. There's something unexpectedly human about the exchange. Two people who started at odds now finding a kind of mutual understanding. Whoopi smiles. You see, that's growth right there. Maybe we all learned something today about giving space, about asking better questions, and about not mistaking quiet for coldness. Joy laughs lightly, and about knowing when to stop pushing Indiana Jones. The studio erupts in laughter, finally releasing the tension that's been building since the first confrontation. Even Harrison laughs, shaking his head. You'd be surprised how often people try. As the final moments tick away, the producer signals the wrap-up. Whoopi leans in, her voice calm and grounded. Harrison, before we close, if you could tell your younger self one thing about fame, what would it be? He pauses, thinking. The lights glint off his eyes. I'd tell him to hold on to the parts of himself that fame can't touch. Because once you start trading pieces of yourself for approval, you forget who you were in the first place. The audience applauds again, loud, sincere, rising to their feet. It's not the kind of applause that comes from entertainment. It's the kind that comes from respect. Joy looks down, then back up at him, her voice soft. That's beautifully said. He gives a slight smile. Thank you. The show fades to its outro music, the hosts waving, the audience still cheering. But behind the smiles and the applause, something lingers. A feeling that what just happened wasn't just an interview. It was a confrontation between the image and the man behind it. Between entertainment and truth. Between performance and personhood. When the cameras finally cut, Joy leans over, extending her hand. No hard feelings. Harrison shakes it, firm but calm. None. Just clarity. She nods. Fair enough. As he walks off the stage, the crew and audience alike stand to clap. Some whisper, others record quietly, capturing what they believe will be one of those unforgettable View moments, the kind that ripples through social media within minutes. And sure enough, by the time Harrison steps into his black SUV outside the studio, clips of the exchange are already trending. Twitter headlines flash. Harrison Ford shuts down Joy Behar in brutal live moment. Others spin it differently. Joy Behar stands her ground against Hollywood icon. But amid the chaos of opinions and viral clips, something more meaningful happens. Viewers begin discussing not who won, but what was said. Boundaries, respect, privacy. In the comment sections and reaction videos, people reflect. Maybe we do ask too much of the people we admire. Maybe being open doesn't mean being available. By nightfall, the clip reaches millions. Fans flood Harrison's social media with messages. Not gossip, but gratitude. Thank you for standing up for your piece. You said what needed to be said. Even Joy Behar posts later that night. Had a spirited debate with Harrison Ford today. Learned something valuable about respect and limits. That's what real conversations are for. And just like that, what began as a clash becomes a lesson. One that reaches far beyond that table. Because sometimes the most powerful moments on live television aren't scripted or planned. They're the ones that remind everyone watching, whether they're famous or not, that standing up for your boundaries isn't hostility. It's humanity. And as the world replays that exchange, one line echoes louder than all the rest. I don't owe anyone my personality. They got the movies. That's the deal. What do you think? Was Harrison right to draw that line, or did Joy just do her job? Let us know your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe to Talk Narrative for more dramatic, human stories that take you beyond the headlines.